Darren, we're
What's
kind of
going on?
becoming more consistent again.
Yes, I've been eating a lot more fiber lately.
Have you?
Just so you know, yeah,
In what
yeah.
form? Psyllium husk?
No,
Gummies?
no, the powder. You get
Oh,
the powder from like Target or whatever.
so when someone tells you full of shit, you're like, actually,
It tastes like Tang.
yeah. Oh, there we go. Oh,
Yeah,
that stuff. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Kinda, I guess. Does
Back.
anybody know what Tang is anymore?
Yeah, Poontang.
Yeah, well, that's obvious.
Yeah. Speaking of Johnny Gill,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I bet you he got some back in the day.
No doubt.
Yeah, that's a different band.
So where are we at?
Episode 38.
Yes.
So we're live on the TikTok. Hello, TikTok. We're recording over here. We're kind of going to go off the cuff today, right? Because we've been talking about like the origin story, and even though we're 38 episodes into it now, we've never really talked about
Yeah,
the impetus.
this came about one day I read a comment and this guy basically was like, "What do these influencers bring to the table?" And he was quite rude, like as if our opinions don't matter. But they are our opinions, and we're here. If you listen, great. If you don't, whatever.
And we all know what they say about opinions. Eat
So
more
we
fiber.
figured, basically, he presented himself as somebody that's been in the restaurant industry for a long time, and he's done a lot of things. And I simply just stated what I had done, and well, not what I had done, but I was like, yeah, me too. So I figured, let's do a origin story.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da.
Origin story. So that was our quick intro, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to the spot where the good times flow. Chris and Darren behind the bar, putting on a show in Vegas where the sun shines bright and the stories unfold. Grab a pipe, pull up a chair, let the good times roll. Sip, socialize, shine, that's the motto we live by. From the strip to downtown, beneath the desert sky. Walls tell tales, bars tell lies, but here we speak the truth.
Let's get into the gist of this episode. I don't think it's going to last too long. Offline, we were talking a moment ago. Today, we're going to drink Sierra Nevada Springfest IPA from our good friends at Sierra Nevada. And we're saying Greg Breen, still repping the brand. I think he's our regional manager for the Southwest. Obviously,
Good guy, great guy, actually.
The Spring Fest, as it is, probably 85 outside right now
Yeah.
on this early April day. Sip, socialize, shine, motherfucker. Nah.
Cheers.
So, cheers.
Prost.
We're going fresh taste buds into this one.
Is this a new product?
I'm sure it's one of their residuals.
I've seen kind of they've been around for a while, but
There's that
some
grapefruit.
IPA,
Yeah.
some IPA cocktails. Have you
Okay.
ever had one?
No.
I made one at McMullan's. It was just like IPA, lemonade, a little bit of gin.
Did something beep?
Yeah, it's just something.
Okay.
Like I put lemonade, IPA, some gin, and some honey,
Oh,
and it was quite nice
yeah.
on the rocks.
What rocks? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
So have kind of like a shandy almost, but you're jacking it up with a little bit of gin
man, I haven't.
because like the botanicals, like they go really nicely with IPA.
I mean, this definitely has the grapefruit forward to it on
Yeah.
that finish. So, I mean, obviously, if you're it's 6. I think it's 6%. Yeah,
Do you
6%.
think have you ever a shandy with like lemonade? What do you think?
Delicious.
With that?
Yeah.
I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Get it.
Especially
It's funny that you say that because in my buying decision today, before I saw this, because it is getting warmer outside, more warm, I guess, I was thinking something lighter. So, because like the last couple beers I've had, I've just been a bit heavy.
heavier set,
Heavier, yeah. So,
kind of like me.
we're going into episode 38, Origins. Simple, probably our most simple title as of yet. Just call it Origins. So,
Yeah.
Darren,
Not much thought into it, but
you have bartended most of your adult life.
I'm 32 years in.
32 years in. I thought you were only 33 years old. So from
I
the womb.
wish.
Yeah.
I literally got my start. So let's I'll just start at the beginning. Like if you want to ask me anything along the way, let's So basically I started working, I was like a hustler, I had a paper route when I was a kid, wash cars. I helped a neighbor restore cars. But I got a dishwashing job at 16.
Okay.
Started off as a lowly dishwasher and worked my way up. I worked in the kitchen, prep cook, line cook, fry cook. Quickly realized that that was not the life that I wanted to lead. I was hanging out with the cooks, getting drunk after work and
Yeah.
stuff. But I remember I was working at the Keg, and
In Seattle.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So the Keg, for those of you that don't know, is a Canadian steakhouse. Started in North Vancouver, back in the 70s.
Okay.
And it's actually it's all over Canada. It used to be a lot in the Northwest, but now there's actually opening new ones in like Texas and Arizona.
To this day.
Yeah,
Okay, so they're
Yeah.
still expanding.
yeah. But
Should I dare ask if they've grown by private equity? Your favorite word?
they are owned by like an LLC. So I don't know
Okay.
if George, I think his name was George Tittle, opened it. It was originally called the Keg and Cleaver,
Okay.
which I think would be a fantastic name for a bar. Could you imagine?
Yeah, for sure.
Just have like a great steak special,
Yeah.
and a good beer selection.
What dude doesn't like a good beer and a good steak?
Yeah, I think you could build a whole business. Just like Brian McMullan's. You just have to have 3 good products, and then you have a business basically.
What did anyone in your family work in the restaurant business beforehand, or did you
No.
kind of fall forward into it?
No, I'm like the black sheep of the family.
Okay.
I left my home of Seattle and moved to Las Vegas to be a sinner.
So you started at Keg,
Mhm.
and you said the life is not for me in the behind the scenes of the washing the dishes, the pots, the pans.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember one of the nights that God told me I need to stop doing this. One of the dishwashers that I was working with was sick of doing it, so he threw all the pots and pans in the dumpster,
Okay.
and the manager found out, and so he's like, "You need to get those out of the fucking dumpster." And I'm like, "I didn't do it." And luckily he helped me, but they fired the dishwasher. Then I ended up having to close by myself, and I was like, "This is not for me, man." But I remember there was a Christmas party, and my manager at the time, they were giving out like stupid prizes, and I answered the question correctly, and I got a prize that said 2 free server shifts or something like that. And I went to him, and I was like, "Hey, can I trade? Can I take these shifts? Like start as like a busser or something like that?" And he was like, "Oh, by the way, I had really long hair at the time. I was a butt rocker kind of guy."
Okay.
And he's like, "You cut your hair and you're in." And that's how I started bussing, and then quickly became a host server, and then at the ripe age of 21, I was at work Sunday morning, and the bartender came in super drunk. I still know her. Her name was Erin. She came super drunk, and the manager Ron, he looked at me and he was like, or no, it was Dan. He looked at me and he was like, "Hey, you want to bartend, right?" And I was like, "Sure, yeah, of course, that'd be great." And I remember I launched right into it. I didn't even know how to make a Bloody Mary. I was a complete idiot.
Yeah.
Still an idiot, by the way, but just a well-seasoned idiot. So that was my bartending origin story.
Okay. Well, I mean, continue, sir.
What do we got going on?
No, I was just making sure.
The Maybach?
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, I mean, I guess my origin story goes, I had to step off camera for a second. Hi, I'm back.
Yes, tell us yours.
As a young man, I guess subconsciously it was bequeathed to me. None of my family ever worked in restaurants. It's not the story of I was the kid that was, bussing my grandparents' tables or something into a restaurant. But I was summoned as a young man to go downstairs in the basement and fetch beers on family dinner Sunday.
Oh, really?
So my grandmother would send me downstairs with this very tray.
Oh, awesome.
To go get what my parents would be drinking for Sunday dinner, my aunt and uncle, my grandfather and grandmother.
So you had like the root cellar, or the basement, and then you had the extra fridge in the basement.
Yes.
Where all the meat was and stuff.
Yeah, so they had 2 freezers or refrigerators down there, and then they would keep additional meats, then an additional oven down there for holiday baking.
Wow.
So, and then my great grandmother lived upstairs. It was a duplex, so it was 2 stories in the basement, however you want to call it. So you had the upstairs living quarters where she lived, and there was an oven up there, and then there was the middle quarters and the downstairs quarters, and that's where the additional storage was, and my grandfather's workshop. But so when she passed, my parents asked me what I wanted, and I said the only thing I really want was this.
The tray.
And I got it.
That's cool.
But much before that, then, I guess it kind of started for me as far as the beer knowledge and liquor knowledge was in college in summertime. A couple of my friends and I, we all worked at Lucas Liquor in Kansas City. So It got pretty quiet in summertime at a retail liquor store. So
Yeah.
you spent a lot of time dusting the bottles. And so when I was dusting the bottles, I would be reading the bottles too.
Really?
So subconsciously, I was kind of taking in those stories
Absorbing.
and those narratives of all those liqueurs that we put into the cocktails that we make now.
Nice.
And then my first serving or bartending mission came. I've always been a big believer when I was working in Dublin. I was working in the daytime and going to the pub at night and spending my hard-earned dollars from the day, and said, I need to offset this. And so I famously walked out of the Foggy Dew Bar and Temple Bar in Dublin, Ireland in 1999, and I talked to the door guy, and his name was Dom from Donegal.
It's not the same Dom.
No.
Okay.
And I asked if they were looking for help. And he said, we're not. But he goes, go talk to my boss. His name's Aiden. And he's over here, and go see him tomorrow night. And so that became my
you have a much
stock.
You have a much cooler origin story than me. Like you moved to Frankfurt after college, right?
Well, London first.
London first.
Then
okay.
Dublin, then Frankfurt.
And then so yeah, you literally like was it like cool to have a Yank working in a pub? You know, were you able to like tell stories?
Fundamentally, why I was hired was because of my quote unquote Americans capability for customer service.
Oh, really?
And so I ended up working at a swanky hotel bar called it's still there. It's the Morrison.
Oh, really?
On Ormond Quay. So it had just opened. So they wanted that quote unquote American service ability, where an Irishman might tell you just to feck off, you know. That I would actually like listen to you before I told you to feck off.
It's kind of funny to think about, you know, like we worked at an Irish pub where, you know, they wanted Irish people because, you know, you want that kind of,
right,
you know, but it would be the complete opposite over there. Obviously they want, because there's the tipping economy over there is not what it is here.
Yeah,
obviously.
And then I said, you know, I mean, and that's funny because we've talked about that multiple times, like what we think we want sometimes and what we need. You know?
Did you find that people tipped you because you were American, or was it just not a thing over there at all?
If it was another American, you know, they would. But yeah. I mean, just the culture at that time. I mean, and that was my first real entrance, if you will. So yeah. I didn't necessarily. But I think the derivative of that was I worked with a great group of guys, and I just actually told a story to some Irish people that were visiting through the airport a couple nights ago from Westmeath. Mm-hmm. That he's over for a year of military college in Pennsylvania, so he was Irish Army. But I was saying it was like the derivative of working there it was a great group of guys, and then because that hotel bar and that hotel had just opened, it was kind of like the new shiny object in Dublin. So it's